Okay, so I had a request for a tutorial video on the moss stitch. I'm going to show you the moss stitch. This is the moss stitch up close. The moss stitch originally started out as a stitch for knitting, and people used it because it made a weaving pattern. You can tell with the rows here, there's a row, there's a row. But if you look closely, these are single crochet stitches, and it looks like they skip every other one. There's one, there's one. But in the holes where they skip, it looks like the next row comes down, the next single crochet on the next row comes down into that row. And so that's why people liked it. In the knitting world, the pattern that makes is every other stitch is a knit and a purl. So you knit, then you purl, then you knit, then you purl. Then when you go backwards the opposite way, in the top of those knits, you're purling, and in the top of the purls, you're knitting. So that gives it that look of going down into the next row, which gives it the look of what's known as the moss stitch, M-O-S-S. Conveniently the same as my last name. It's also known as the Irish moss stitch in knitting. In crocheting, it's typically sometimes called the linen stitch, or maybe even the granite stitch. You may see that in patterns as well. So how do we do the moss stitch? How do we make it look like that? Pretty simple. The idea behind it is, again, to do the every other one pattern. So in the every other one pattern, basically, and let me get a chain going here and show you, I'm going to do a chain of 16. The reason that I'm going to do 16 is for the moss stitch to work, whether you're doing a blanket or a pot holder or a scarf or a sweater, whatever you're doing with the moss stitch, it has to be an even number of stitches. Again, we're doing the every other one pattern between the single crochet and the chain. In knitting, you're doing every other one between the purl and the knit stitches. So you have to have an even number of stitches. Here's your chain. When you do the first row, you want to skip the first 4 V's and go in that 4th V. So again, the one on your needle doesn't count. Count 4 V's over and go in to that V as your first single crochet. Then you're going to chain 1. Then you're going to skip the next V and go into this V, and again you're going to single crochet and chain 1. Skip the next one, go into this V, single crochet, chain 1. This is what it will start to look like. You can see those holes, every other hole, every other single crochet, and your V's still form on the top like they normally would. So if I switch over to this one that I'm already working on, and you can see it a little bit easier, you can see what it's like to go across a row. When you turn and you go across a row, you're going to chain 2 to take it to the next row. Again, you're going into the every other stitch. So here's a single crochet, here's the chain, here's a single crochet. So the difference with this stitch that's going to make it the most new is, instead of going in that V, you're actually going to go in between your stitches and make your single crochet and then chain. Again, look for that next hole. It's right there. You're going to go into the entire hole of the project. Bring it through, single crochet, chain 1. The next hole's right there. Go into the entire hole in between both single crochets and pull it through. So on other stitches, like we've been learning, the single crochet, the double crochet, the triple, the half double crochet, all of those you go into the top of the V. This is not the same. You're going to go in between the 2 single crochets where you made that chain on the last row and pull your yarn through and make a single crochet and chain. That's what gives it, see how it dips down? That's what gives it the look of dipping down into those other rows. So super simple. Just go in between the 2 single crochets on the next row, single crochet, chain 1, into the hole of the next one, single crochet, chain 1. So this is what it looks like when you've got it going. And you can see those holes up here, so that when you turn around, that's where you're going to go, into those holes. Now let me take you back again to the beginning stages of it so you can see what that looks like and understand how you're starting. You're going to chain just like normal. Make your chain. You need to make sure you have an even amount, whether that's 16, whether that's 24, whether it's 58 and you're doing a blanket. Doesn't really matter, but you have to have an even number on your chain. You're going to skip the first 4 and go into that 4th one. Basically skip the first 3 and go into the next V. But make sure when you turn and make your chain, you go into that 4th V. As you're going to skip 1 V, go into the next V, single crochet like normal, chain 1, skip that V, go into the next V, single crochet, chain 1, skip that V, go into the next V, single crochet, chain 1. This is what it should start looking like. You're going to see the holes in between every single crochet. So that right there is a hole, that's a single crochet, okay? Now your V's are forming on top, everything looks good. When you get to that second row is where you actually start doing the repeating of the rows to make the whole pattern. So again, you're still skipping, that V, but you're skipping that whole stitch. And instead of going into that V, you're going into the hole itself. Single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, go into that hole of the bottom row, single crochet, chain 1, skip that single crochet, go into the hole between those stitches, single crochet, and chain 1. Now we're at the end. There is an end here. There is the single crochet, there is the hole. So I'm still going to go in that hole, pick up that last stitch, single crochet. I'm at the end. There's no end to worry about on this because again, going this way, you're going to do, have 8 holes. And when you go back this way, you're going to do the other 8 holes. That's again why you have to have those even number of stitches. So you just turn around, chain 2 on your turnaround, look for that first hole, which is right there. Go in the whole entire hole of that row that you just did, single crochet, chain 1. Again, skip the stitch, go into the hole underneath the chain, pull it through, single crochet, chain 1. That is the moss stitch. Pretty simple. Again, basically you're just single crochet, chain, single crochet, chain, single crochet, chain. Your single crochets, once you get past the second row, are going into the entire hole, not your V, okay? See that? You're not going into the V, you're going into the entire hole of that row you just completed. When you're doing the chain and you're getting started on your first row, I'll go back to that one more time just so you can see it. You're going to chain an even number. You're going to turn and skip the first 3 V's and go in the 4th V. Once you go in that 4th V, you're going to single crochet, chain 1. Then you're going to skip a V right there. You're going to go into the next V. You're going to single crochet and then chain 1. Skip the V, go into the next V, single crochet, and then chain 1. Going to give you that look on the first row. Once you start turning around and doing the other rows, it's going to give you this look up here. But still the same thing, skipping every other one, and instead of worrying about the V's, go into that hole right there where my finger is. All right, this is what it ends up looking like once you get it done. I like to make scrubbies out of these. This is about a 3, I don't know if you can see that, it's about a 3x4 section. I like to make 2 once I have 2 made, which is what I'm doing here with this blue. I like to pin them together, sew them together around the edge. They make a great dishwasher scrubby rag. So they're really heavy. If you want to know what this is made out of specifically, it's made out of the sugar and cream yarn. Looks like this when you buy it, made by Lily. These wash well. They go through my washer and dryer on hot cycle or cold cycle. Makes no difference. They could last for about 2 to 3 years. They last a really long time. I wash them about once a week. Usually I'll go through 2 a week in my sink. I've got one in my sink right now, actually. Washing instructions are on the back. These come in a variety of colors. So if you've got, you know, a Rooster Kitchen or an Apple Kitchen, you could do a really neat red and tan together. The moss stitch is one of those stitches where you can trade colors at the end of each row and it would look really, really neat. It's an easy stitch to trade colors on. Every time you go down, just swap your colors in and out. So keep that always in mind. But this is what I use it for. Lots of people, again, use it for sweaters, scarves, baby blanket. It's a good baby blanket one. Partly because, as you can see, with granny squares and other things like that, it makes holes in designs. There's no holes in designs in this. This is a good, like, to lay them on the carpet and stuff. And even if you wanted to use this particular yarn, this one here is not a real heavy yarn. It's not a real scratchy yarn. So you could do a lot of things with it, even pot holders, or even sometimes those burn dishes that you set out at Thanksgiving with, put the pot on itself, the side dish pot. So anyway, that's the moss stitch, kind of a long video. If you have any questions, feel free to message me. I hope this helps, and happy crocheting. We'll see you next time.